I'm Haley, and I thought I knew my marriage, my husband, my limits, until one weekend in the heart of an untamed forest shattered everything. We escaped the city's suffocating grip, seeking to mend the silent cracks between us with starlit skies and the whisper of pine trees, but what I found instead was a forbidden pull, a dangerous spark that ignited something wild within me. As the firelight danced and shadows deepened, I stood on the edge of a choice that could unravel 8 years of vows in a single, reckless heartbeat. What did I do when temptation whispered louder than loyalty? And what did Ethan see when he returned to our campsite under the cover of night? Stick around to find out. Picture this: the hum of 1,000 lives buzzing around me, a symphony of car horns and hurried footsteps that never quite lets you breathe. I'm Haley, 36, caught in the relentless pulse of this city that never slows down. My days are a blur of deadlines and coffee runs, my nights a quiet collapse into a bed I share with Ethan, my husband of 8 years. He's 38, a man of few words but endless depth, the kind of person who can sit for hours just watching the world unfold. His eyes light up when he talks about the woods, the smell of pine, the crackle of a campfire, memories of childhood camping trips that seem to live in his soul. I've always loved that about him, how he carries nature like a secret he's eager to share, even if I've never quite understood it myself. Lately, though, there's been a space between us, not a chasm, but a subtle drift. Work has us both tethered to screens and schedules, and those stolen moments we used to cherish, late-night talks, lingering touches, have been replaced by tired nods and half-hearted smiles. I miss him, even when he's right beside me. So when Ethan suggested a weekend getaway to the countryside, a chance to unplug and just be us, I felt a flicker of something like hope. He painted a picture of open fields, starlit skies, and no signal to pull us back to reality. His voice had this quiet urgency, like he needed this more than he could say, and I couldn't bear to dim that light in his eyes. I'll admit, I hesitated at first. I'm a city girl through and through. Give me paved streets and Wi-Fi over dirt trails and creepy crawlies any day. The thought of bugs skittering over my skin or sleeping on the hard ground made me cringe. No hot showers, no cozy coffee shops, just nature. Raw and unfiltered, as Ethan put it. But seeing how much it meant to him, how his face softened when he talked about escaping, I couldn't say no. I wanted to bridge that gap between us, to step into his world for once, even if it meant leaving my comfort zone miles behind. Packing for the trip felt like stepping into a different life. Ethan was in his element, carefully folding our small tent, checking the sleeping bags for any tears, and setting out a little portable stove that looked like it belonged in a survival show. He insisted on keeping things minimal, no fancy gadgets, no extra fluff. "We need to feel the rawness of it, Haley," he said, his hands steady as he packed just the essentials. I watched him, half amused, half intrigued, wondering if I'd survive a weekend without my usual crutches. But there was something about his focus, the way his fingers lingered on each item like it held a memory, that stirred something in me. A warmth, a pull, a quiet promise of rediscovery. Close together, feeling a renewed connection. The drive out of the city felt like shedding a heavy coat I didn't even realize I was wearing. As we wound through those narrow country roads, the concrete jungle faded in the rear view, replaced by rolling hills and endless stretches of green. I rolled down the window, letting the air hit my face, growing sharper and cooler with every mile. By the time we entered the dense pine forest, it was like stepping into another world. The trees towered over us, their branches knitting together so tight I could barely see the sky, and the scent of pine needles filled my lungs, sharp and clean, like nothing I'd ever breathed before. I glanced at Ethan, his hands steady on the wheel, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He looked lighter, like the forest was already working some kind of magic on him. We found our spot after a bit of searching. A secluded little clearing right by a small river that gurgled and bubbled like it was whispering secrets. The trees encircled us, their shadows long and deep, and the sunlight that managed to sneak through painted the ground in golden patches like scattered coins. I stepped out of the car, my boots crunching on the earth, and just stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The sound of the water, the rustle of leaves, the way the air felt so pure, it almost stung. It was overwhelming, but in a way that made my chest loosen, like I'd been holding my breath for years. Setting up camp was a whole different beast. Ethan took charge, pitching the tent with this effortless precision that made me feel like a clumsy kid. He drove the stakes into the ground with quick, sure movements, his forearms flexing under the rolled-up sleeves of his flannel. I couldn't help but watch, a little mesmerized, remembering how those hands used to pull me close in ways that set my skin on fire. Shaking off the thought, I turned to unroll the sleeping bags, fumbling with the stubborn fabric until it tangled around my legs. I let out a frustrated huff, and Ethan glanced over, chuckling softly. "Need a hand, city girl?" he teased, his voice warm, and for a second, it felt like old times. I laughed despite myself, waving him off, but the sound of our shared amusement echoed in the clearing, mingling with the river's song. Once the camp was set, we spent the day gathering firewood. Ethan showed me how to spot the dry branches, the ones that snap clean and don't bend, his voice patient as he pointed out the difference between damp wood and kindling. I followed his lead, brushing dirt off my jeans, feeling a strange kind of pride when I hauled back a decent pile. Later, we brewed coffee over a small fire, the bitter aroma curling into the earthy forest air, grounding me in a way I didn't expect. I sat on a log, cradling the tin mug, watching the steam rise as Ethan poked at the flames. His face glowed in the flickering light, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of deep amber and violet, I found myself alone by the fire. Ethan had wandered off to check the river for a good fishing spot for the morning, his silhouette disappearing into the thickening dusk. I poked at the flames with a stick, watching the sparks dance upward, lost in thought about the distance that had crept between us over the years. The forest was quiet, save for the crackle of the fire and the distant murmur of the river, until a sudden rustling of leaves snapped me out of my reverie. My heart jumped, my grip tightening on the stick as I turned toward the sound. From the shadowed edge of the clearing, two figures emerged, their boots crunching on the pine needles. I stood, my pulse quickening, as they stepped into the flickering light of the fire. The first was a rugged man, probably in his early 40s, with a weathered face etched by time and the elements. His name was Caleb, and his voice was deep and gravelly, like stones tumbling in a riverbed when he introduced himself. Beside him stood Travis, a bit younger, with sharp, piercing eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, and a quiet intensity that made the air feel heavier. Their clothes were dusty, worn from days on the trail, and their heavy backpacks slumped against their shoulders as if they carried the weight of the world. They explained they were locals, hikers who'd been out in the wilderness for days, and asked if they could pitch their tents nearby for the night. Caleb's tone was polite, almost earnest, as he mentioned their exhaustion and the safety of sticking together in such remote woods. Travis nodded, his gaze steady on me, adding that they'd keep their distance if I preferred. I hesitated, glancing toward the path where Ethan had vanished, a knot of uncertainty twisting in my chest. Part of me wanted to say no, to guard our little slice of solitude, but another part, lonely, curious, craving something I couldn't name, pushed me to agree. I nodded, gesturing to a spot a few yards from our tent, and they thanked me with small, tired smiles. As the night deepened, we sat around the fire, sharing tea from a thermos they'd brought. The warmth of the drink seeped into my hands, grounding me as Caleb spun tales of the forest, legends of hidden trails and forgotten cabins, his voice weaving a spell that made the shadows beyond the firelight seem alive with secrets. Travis chimed in now and then, his words sparse but sharp, cutting through the quiet with observations about the stars overhead or the way the wind carried warnings if you knew how to listen. Their laughter mingled with mine, echoing into the night, a sound so foreign yet so welcome after days of silence between Ethan and me. I couldn't help but notice the little things as the hours slipped by. Caleb's hand brushed my shoulder as he handed me another cup of tea, his touch lingering just a heartbeat longer than it should have, sending a jolt through me I hadn't expected. Travis, sitting on the log beside me, shifted closer than necessary, his knee grazing mine, the contact brief but electric. My breath caught, a rush of adrenaline surging through my veins, awakening something I hadn't felt in years. It was raw, untamed, a pull I couldn't ignore even as my mind screamed at me to step back. To think of Ethan, to remember the vows I'd made. But the firelight danced in their eyes, and the warmth of the night wrapped around us like a cocoon, blurring the lines I'd always drawn so clearly. I wrestled with myself, torn between loyalty and this sudden, primal draw. My heart pounded as I questioned everything. How had I drifted so far from the woman I thought I was? How could a stranger's glance, a fleeting touch, unravel me so completely? Yet there I was, leaning into the moment, letting the heat of the fire and the weight of their nearness pull me under. And then, I gave in. Under the vast canopy of stars, with the forest holding its breath, I let myself fall into the forbidden. A storm of emotions that left me breathless. I'm standing there, frozen, as the sound of Ethan's boots crunching on the pine needles cuts through the haze of the night. My heart slams against my ribcage, a wild, frantic rhythm that drowns out the crackle of the fire. He steps into the clearing, his silhouette tall and unyielding against the backdrop of the dark forest, and for a moment, time seems to stutter. Our eyes meet, and it's like a lightning strike. His gaze pierces through me, unreadable. A storm of emotions swirling in those depths I've known for years. There's pain there, raw and jagged, but also curiosity, and something else. Something I can't name. Something that makes my stomach twist in ways I don't understand. I brace myself, expecting a flood of anger, a shout, anything to shatter the suffocating stillness, but he doesn't move. He's rooted to the spot, his jaw tight, his hands hanging loose at his sides, like he's caught in the same paralyzing moment as I am. Behind me, I hear the hurried shuffle of Caleb and Travis. Their mumbled apologies tumble out, low and awkward, as they scramble to their feet. I don't turn to look at them. I can't tear my eyes away from Ethan. But I feel the shift in the air as they retreat, their boots scuffing against the dirt, their presence fading as they head toward their tents on the edge of the clearing. The space they leave behind feels cavernous, and suddenly it's just me and Ethan, alone with the weight of what he's walked into. The fire casts flickering shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp lines of his cheekbones, the furrow in his brow, the way his lips press into a thin, hard line. I open my mouth to speak, to explain, but the words trip over themselves, clumsy and trembling. Ethan, I didn't mean for... My voice cracks, barely above a whisper, and I hate how small I sound. How guilty. How lost. He doesn't respond. Not a word, not a sound. Instead, he moves, slow and deliberate, his boots heavy on the ground as he walks toward the fire. My breath catches as I watch him, every step feeling like a countdown to something I can't predict. He lowers himself onto the log across from me, the flames between us dancing in the night air, casting an eerie glow over his features. He doesn't look at me now. His eyes are fixed on the fire, staring into the heart of it as if the answers to everything are hidden in the embers. The silence stretches out, thick and suffocating, wrapping around us like a shroud. I can hear my own heartbeat, a relentless thud in my ears, louder than the distant hoot of an owl somewhere in the forest, louder than the sharp crackle of the burning wood. The night feels endless, the darkness pressing in from all sides, and I'm trapped in this moment, waiting for the storm I know must be coming. I shift on my log, the rough bark digging into my thighs, and I can't stop the flood of thoughts crashing through my mind. Guilt gnaws at me, sharp and bitter, a reminder of the line I crossed, the betrayal I let myself fall into under the cover of starlight. I think of the heat of the moment, the way I let myself be swept away by forbidden currents, a reckless tide I didn't fight hard enough to resist. And yet, beneath the shame, there's this strange, lingering thrill, a pulse of something wild and untamed that I can't shake, no matter how much I try to bury it. I hate myself for it, for feeling anything other than regret. But it's there, simmering under my skin, making my fingers tremble as I clutch the edge of the log. What does that say about me? About us? I glance at Ethan, searching his face for any hint of what he's thinking, but he's a statue, carved from stone, his expression locked away behind a wall I can't breach. I notice his hands then, resting on his knees. They clench for a brief moment, knuckles whitening as if he's gripping onto something invisible, wrestling. I'm still sitting here, the fire's glow flickering between us, my heart a drumbeat in my chest that won't let up. Ethan's silence is a weight, heavier than the darkness of the forest around us, and I'm drowning in it, waiting for him to say something, anything, to break this unbearable tension. My fingers dig into the rough bark of the log, the sting grounding me as I watch him, his face half-shadowed, half illuminated by the dying flames. Then, slowly, as if the world itself is holding its breath, he lifts his gaze from the fire. His eyes meet mine, and it's like a blade cutting through the fog, sharp, piercing, raw, with something I can't quite name. There's a storm in those depths, a mix of hurt and something deeper, something that makes my stomach twist in knots. He leans forward slightly, the firelight catching the hard lines of his jaw, and his voice comes out low, almost a whisper, but it hits me like a thunderclap. I wanted to see you differently, and I did. The words hang in the air, heavy and deliberate, each one sinking into me like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through every thought I've been clinging to. I'm frozen, my breath caught somewhere in my throat, my mind scrambling to make sense of what he's just said. See me differently? What does that even mean? My lips part, but no sound comes at first, just a shaky exhale. Finally, I manage to murmur, my voice barely audible over the crackle of the fire. What? What do you mean, Ethan? He doesn't flinch, doesn't look away. His gaze holds mine, steady and unyielding, as if he's been waiting for this moment as long as I've been dreading it. His voice stays low, measured, like he's thought about every word 1,000 times before letting them out. I've felt us drifting, Haley. Further apart every day. I needed to know if you could still feel something. Passion. Fire. Even if it wasn't with me. His words slice through me, each one a jagged edge that tears at the fragile threads I've been holding on to. I blink, my vision blurring for a second as my mind races to keep up. He needed to know? Did he set this up somehow? Was this some kind of test? A twisted way to see if I was still alive inside? Still capable of wanting more than the numbness we've settled into? A surreal wave of emotions crashes over me, and I'm caught in the undertow, unable to find solid ground. There's relief, sharp and unexpected, That he's not exploding with anger, not tearing into me with the rage I thought I deserved. But there's horror too, a creeping dread at the implication that he might have orchestrated this, that he pushed me into a situation to see how I'd react, to see if I'd break under the weight of temptation. And then, beneath it all, there's this twisted, uncomfortable sense of validation. He saw me tonight. Really saw me. In a way he hasn't in years. Not as the tired, overworked woman I've become, but as someone alive, desirable, burning with a hunger I'd forgotten I could feel. It's a bitter kind of comfort, one that makes my skin prickle with shame even as it stirs something deep inside me. I can't look away from him, but I need to confess this, to let it out, even if it's just to the night air, to the unseen audience of the forest. I don't regret what happened. I can't lie about that, not to myself. I liked it, the rush, the heat, the way the wilderness stripped away every layer of restraint I'd built up over the years. It showed me a side of myself I'd buried so deep I thought it was gone forever, a part of me that craved something wild, something untamed. I felt awake for the first time in so long, caught in a moment that was as dangerous as it was freeing. And even now, with Ethan's words echoing in my ears, with my choices pressing down on me, the morning after feels like waking up in a different world, one where the air is heavier, laden with unspoken words and lingering shadows. I'm up before the sun has fully breached the horizon, the sky a pale gray streaked with hints of pink. The forest around me still cloaked in a quiet that feels almost reverent. My body aches from the hard ground beneath the sleeping bag, but it's nothing compared to the ache in my chest, a tangled mess of emotions I can't begin to unravel. I crawl out of the tent, the cool dampness of the earth seeping through my boots, and I stand there for a moment, breathing in the sharp scent of pine, trying to ground myself in something real, something steady. I glance over to where Caleb and Travis had set up their camp, just beyond the edge of our clearing. They're already breaking down their tents, their movements quick and mechanical, like they can't wait to put distance between us. I watch as they stuff gear into their backpacks, their heads down, avoiding any glance in my direction. There's no trace of the warmth from last night, no echo of shared laughter or fleeting touches. When they finally head toward the trail, Caleb mutters a gruff, "Take care," barely audible over the rustle of leaves, while Travis offers a curt nod, his sharp eyes fixed on the path ahead. I don't respond, just stand there, arms crossed over my chest, feeling the weight of their hurried departure like a door slamming shut on a chapter I'm not sure I wanted to write. Ethan emerges from the tent behind me, his presence a quiet force that shifts the air. We don't speak as we start to dismantle our own camp, each movement deliberate, almost too careful, as if we're afraid to disturb the fragile silence between us. The only sound is the murmur of the river nearby, a constant, gentle hum that fills the void where words should be. I fold the sleeping bags, my fingers fumbling with the fabric, while Ethan pulls up the tent stakes, his back to me, his shoulders tense under his flannel shirt. Every now and then, I catch myself stealing glances at him, searching for some sign of what he's feeling, but his face is a mask, closed off in a way that makes my stomach twist with uncertainty. We work like strangers, side by side but miles apart, the events of the night before hanging over us like a storm cloud that refuses to break. Packing up the car feels like the final act of a play I didn't rehearse for. I slide the last of our gear into the trunk, the metallic thud of the lid closing echoing in the stillness. And then we're on the road, the forest receding behind us in the rearview mirror. The trees thin out, giving way to open fields, and then the familiar gray of asphalt. But the weight of what happened doesn't lift. It sits between us in the car, an invisible passenger that neither of us acknowledges. Ethan keeps his eyes on the road, his hands steady on the wheel, while I stare out the window, watching the world blur past, my mind replaying every moment under the starlit canopy, every choice, every rush of heat, every unspoken truth. I want to say something, to break through the wall of silence, but the words stick in my throat, heavy and useless. So we drive on, wrapped in our own thoughts, the hum of the engine the only sound breaking the quiet. I'm torn apart inside, and I need to confess this, even if it's just to the empty space around me. There's guilt, sharp and relentless, clawing at me for betraying Ethan, for letting myself cross a line I never thought I would. I think of our years together, the promises we made, the life we built, and I wonder how I could have risked it all in a single, reckless moment. But beneath that guilt, there's something else. A thrill. A pulse of exhilaration that I can't ignore, no matter how much I try. That night in the wilderness, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, caught in a current of desire that swept away every layer of restraint. It was dangerous, forbidden, a dance of passion and desire that both thrilled and terrified me. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.